In this video, we're going to be showcasing our new On the Vine Monogram fonts. It's a 2-inch and a 3-inch Monogram font, and we're going to show you some neat characteristics of this font, some neat things that we can do here in EasyStone, some very specialized features that make working with this font quite easy, but also how we can even intertwine these letters. The technique that's used, if you look at the letter H and the letter P, where it intertwines with our letter A, you can see at all those intersections are absolutely perfect. And we have some neat tools here in EasyStone that enable us to do that very easily if you understand the process. But let me show you and talk to you a little bit about some of the challenges we had when we created this font. The first thing, anytime I create something, I think about how I want to use it first and foremost. And one of the things that was really making it difficult for us to create this font for the masses was the number of stone sizes that one may want to use. In my case, I tend to use lots of different stone sizes because I think the design looks better and calls for it, where other people don't care to use all those multiple stone sizes. So I had to create one font for all, and I think I've kind of come across a happy medium here as to working with a font, and then you get to pick and choose what size stones you want to use within that font. But there are some important things that you have to understand when you're using this font. If you understand the process of using it, you'll be able to create whatever you want to create quite simply and easily if you just kind of follow our technique. So let me go ahead and type the font out here. So I'm just going to type an H and a P, and we'll go into our font manager here inside EasyStone, and let's look for On the Vine. So there you see On the Vine 2, and the H and the P are 2-inch. Okay. So what we want to do, the first step here is to take our font here, and what we need to do is set our stone size to be whatever we want to use. Whatever the smallest stone size that we want to use within the design, that's what we need to change these circles to. Right now they're not necessarily any specific size. So we'll come in here, choose our SS6 stone size, which in my case I use 2.6, and I'll hit resize font. And now I know that these circles are exactly 2.6 millimeters. We can see that right here within EasyStone. So those are good. We're going to go ahead and set those to crystal. Those are set in place. Now the next thing of course we want to do is grab our text tool, type in a capital letter A, and we want to use our On the Vine 3, which this would make a 3-inch letter. So it's a little bit bigger. And again, the smallest stone size that we want to use in our letter A is in fact a 2.6 millimeter stone. So we'll go ahead and resize that as well. And if we select that, you can see it's give or take 3 inches, right? 2.981. So it's give or take 3 inches. All right. So now we have to begin our process. And I think I'll begin our process with the simplest letter, which will be our letter H. We'll just move this up here. Now certainly we could use this letter H just as is. Let's go ahead and throw a weed box around it. We could use it just as is, and it looks fine. It's perfectly acceptable. But what if we want to make it special? Well, we're able to do that. Remember I said in certain cases some people will want to use different stone sizes because to me it just adds a little bit more to the design. So here's some important principles to understand when you're making these changes. If we look at the original font here, you'll see that it gets thick and thin in various areas. So what we want to do is we want to kind of mimic that in our font. So here's what we're going to do. The intersections, as a general rule, where that intersection is, we don't want to move it. We don't want to move this stone. Any other stone we can move, but don't move that intersecting stone. We did all the work for you. You can see here all of our intersections are perfect. So what we're going to do here to mimic from this intersection point up, you can see it gets thick and then it gets thin. So to mimic that, we're just going to come in here and select some stones with our freehand pick tool and change those to 10s. So it's going to go 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, then 6. And you know what? I'm going to change a couple more. Okay, so that takes care of those at the top. Now you look at the bottom of the H, you can see it goes 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, or it goes thick, 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 and then it goes back to thin. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come in here, just select a swath of stones, and let's make those 10. So you can see it gets thick and thin. So then we want to do the same thing over here to the other side. We're going to come in here to the intersection, right? We're going to make those thick. And then same thing here. We want all of these to be thick. So all the way down to, I don't know, let's just make them all the way down to there. Let's make all of those thick as well. All right, so now you can kind of see this kind of coming together, but what we're going to do with all this stone spacing situation? Well, that's the easy fix. So let's just start with this first section. We remember I said we don't want to move the intersecting point. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to select all of our stones, just like so. We are then going to run our respace function. And what that'll actually do is it creates us a path. As you can see, our path has been created. In fact, if we go into wireframe mode, you can see that easier. And these stones are way too tight, so we need to start dropping stones. So if I drop just one for the time being and hit respace again, you can see our spacing gets just a little bit wider between these stones. I'm going to go one more time. I'm going to drop a 6 this time. And there's our spacing just the way I want it. So we'll go ahead and select that again and hit respace. And yes, that is the way I want it, just like so. Okay, so if we go back over here to enhance mode, now you can kind of see how it gets thick and then it goes back to thin. It doesn't have to start, this point doesn't have to be exact, just whatever you, the designer, wants. So now what we're going to do is go all the way from the intersection all the way down to the tail. Okay? Same thing. We need to create our path first, which now we've done, and now we can start dropping some stones. And when I hit respace again, then that will allow us to go ahead. You can see there. We'll hit respace one more time. And now I think what we've done is we've taken away too many stones. I'm going to actually put a couple of those back to 10 there. Actually, I tell you what, let's add one more 10 maybe. So you just play with it till you get that spacing visually the way you want to, and I think I'm happy with it there. But you can see how different that H already looks. It looks quite different. All right, so same thing on this side. We're going to go from the tip to the intersecting point here. We need to create our path, which we've now done, and then we can drop a stone, respace along that path, and I think that's pretty good. We'll go ahead and get rid of that. And then same thing here. But we're going to go from the intersection all the way down and around to the tail. All the way down and around. Go ahead and hit respace. That creates our path, and then we can start dropping some stones here. Go ahead and hit respace again. And I think I'm happy with that stone spacing. So you can see we have a little bit of difference here. So we'll just peel that away, and we can manipulate a couple of stones there. So you can see how that stones will come down and around, like so. Here, the spacing is a little bit tight, so we'll select these stones, and we'll hit respace. And then here, you can see this stone is not coming out where I really would like it to. So we'll just bump that up there to make that look like we want it to look. So yes, we played around with it a little bit, but look at the difference there. So let's add a weed box. And you can see that we do have a little bit better looking result with our letter H by making those changes with the different stone sizes. So it's just a technique that you spend a little extra time on, but to me you get a better looking result. All right, so there's our letter H. So now we'll go ahead and focus on our letter P. Very similar, probably not as much to do with this one. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create some of our larger stones. So we'll go ahead and make those some 10s there. Then we have to create our path to be able to respace these stones. Intersection to intersection there. We'll respace. That creates the path. And then I know I want to delete this SS6 stone here and here and see if that was enough to give us the appropriate spacing. And I think that's going to give us our appropriate spacing. And so then we want to do a similar thing down here. So we'll go ahead all the way down to the intersection there. We'll reset those to 10. Go ahead and make a selection from intersection to intersection. We need to create a path, which we've now done. And then we can come in here. Hopefully that'll be enough stones deleted to give us our necessary spacing, and it does seem to work there. So you can see now we've taken care of that. And then I'm going to come in here and we'll make some of these stones 10 at the bottom. Then we'll have to come in here and of course we'll have to respace the stones to create our path. Once we have our path created, we can drop a couple to 3 stones here. See how many we have to drop. There's our spacing the way we need it to be. And then you can see this stone doesn't line up just exactly so. So we'll pick those up and move them where we think they need to be. Same thing here. These stones right here are a little bit tight. So we'll bump those across. Minor change there. But there is our P. So you can see that went quite a bit quicker. Let's just throw a little weed box around it so you can kind of see what we got going on. So far so good. So we'll go ahead and take our H and line it up with our P there. I'm going to group all of my H together. I'm going to group all of my P. We'll just hit G for group. So now we have our letter A here. Now for our letter A, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Because this letter is supposed to be a bit more pronounced, you can see it's supposed to be a bit bigger. What we're going to do is we're going to change right here at the top. We're going to change out a few stones to be 10s, like so. Then we're going to go to 16s. So we're going to go to 16s all the way down to here. Make all those 16s. And then we're going to go back to 10. Here we're going to go 16. And then we're going to go back to 10. Okay. So what we want to do here is, again, we want to go from the intersection to the very tip. So we'll pick up all of those stones. We want to hit respace. That will create our path. And then we have to come in here and of course we have to delete many stones to get the necessary spacing that we want. Let's try that. Go ahead and hit respace. Okay, that didn't quite do what we had expected it to. So let's try it again. Sometimes that respace tool, the way it has to make these calculations, it doesn't make those calculations exactly like we want or need them to. So sometimes just rearranging a stone or two can make a big difference. Also sometimes changing the direction of the curve. You see how all these stones are big and then it goes to little? That's the exact opposite of what we want. So sometimes reversing the curve right here, sometimes that can help. So let's try doing that and hitting respace. And now we have the proper spacing that we need. So if it ever acts up, just turn the curve in the opposite direction. So you can see we go from big stone, little stone, all the way around. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind when you're working with that respace function. If it does something odd, change the direction of the curve, and generally that will fix any problem you might have. So let's come in here and select this font here and come down here. So we've selected from the intersecting stone to the intersecting stone. We're going to respace. That's going to create our path. And then we have to get rid of a whole stack of stones here. So we're going to do 3. We're going to do 3 10s, 3 10s. We'll get rid of a 16 and maybe one more. Let's try that. And that's not bad, but it's still pretty tight. So I think what we need to do is get rid of a 16 on either side, and we'll probably be all right. Yeah, that's going to work fine. So that takes care of that, and then we're going to take care of this other tail over here. We have to create our path first, and now that we've created our path with that respace function, we can just come in here and delete several stones and give it a go. So we'll hit respace again. And I think that takes care of that just fine. Go ahead and hit delete. Obviously this is a little bit too close, so we'll pull that away. Obviously these are too close, so what I would do is delete one. Respace those horizontally. Very nice. And then I would just come in here and grab these and reposition where they need to go so it looks as if this curve is coming around, through, and down. Okay? So now we have our H, our A, and our P just like we wanted. Multiple stone sizes, so on and so forth. Now remember, this H and the P is grouped, so we're going to select both of them and hit E for Edward, and that will just kind of line those up center. Now here's the next trick. The next trick is to bring all these into one monogram. So let me show you how I would go about doing that. Someone has to be king, and generally speaking, I say the middle initial, that's king. So what I do here is come in here and set the king color just like that. So what that's telling us is we really don't want to move these blue stones. If we need to make a change, we're going to make it on the H or the P colored stones. So let's move our H over, and let's just decide how this is going to interact. You as the designer will make that choice right here, right now. How's this going to interact? And, you know, do I want it like this? However you want it, that's how it's going to be. And I think, yes, I think I'm going to do something like this. Okay? And so we want our P to be somewhat similar in placement. So again, we'll just peel our P over here. And we just kind of look at things and decide, you know, how we want our P to interact too. And I'm looking at the distance of our P and our H, and I don't really care where it intersects with my A. I just want to know that the distance left to right is about like I want it. And it pretty well is. So I'm going to select my P, and I'm going to right click and ungroup, and my H. This is kind of the fun part because it is actually the easy part. Because it is what it is. So, and what do I mean by that? Well, let's just take the top of our letter A and our P where they're intersecting. First things first, we're just going to delete the blatantly overlapping stones. Okay, so that's step one. Those are gone. Now we do have a situation here too that we have to deal with. And so now we have some decisions to make. What I would probably do is I would probably move this stone up. I would take these stones, space them, and take a look at that. And then I would take these stones on the other side and space them accordingly. So that this spacing is more or less continuous all the way through. And it's close enough where I think I'd be satisfied with it. We could probably increase it ever so slightly to have that spacing a bit more uniform. So now what we have to do is we have to close in this gap, and we have to move these stones up a little bit. So we could just come in here, move those stones up a little bit, and then I have to close in this gap. So I'm just going to select all these stones. I'm selecting one stone and holding the shift key and selecting all the other ones. So now that spacing is nice and perfectly even. So you can see it's very, very simple to take care of that intersection right there. So now, the next thing is the bottom part. Now this is where things get a little bit more tricky. But the principle of how we handle these interactions are exactly the same as what we just did up here. There's a bit more work to do down here, but the principle is the same. So you can see where the P is coming down. We need to pretend that that P is intersecting right there. Okay, so then it's going to kind of come on through. So the first thing that I do is take care of this direction. Respace. Now we've taken care of that direction. So now we just kind of have to pretend that it's just keep on coming. Okay, so we can move this into place. We can move this into place. Then this we have to delete. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take this and pretend that this is part of our P now, which really it's our A, and it's just going to keep on coming through. And then the rest of this on the other side, the rest of this right here, we're going to just, again, reposition. Now in this case, I'm actually going to rotate it a little bit, just because I think it'll work a little bit better. It'll just the way it kind of all comes together. So then we'll delete that. So now you can see the P's coming down through, loop-de-loop. So now we're going to take care of the A going this direction. So let's take care of that. Respace. That fills in, makes everything nice and even there. But now what we have to do is we have to pretend that this is keep on going. So we're going to delete this, and we're just going to manipulate these few stones. I'll tell you what, let's make that a 10. So you can see now our A is coming down and around, and then we have to move these stones. So let's move those. So now it's as if those have perfect intersections where they didn't. So it's just a small little change, and of course that respace function makes making those adjustments so much simpler and easier. Now me personally, I don't like the way these stones are so close to my A. So I might just come in here and just tweak, you know, how that curve is just a little bit, which you can do quite simply. And you know, I tend to fuss a little bit too much, for sure. But you can get that looking exactly the way you want to. Okay, so same thing over here with our letter H and the way it's interacting here with our A. We have to figure out what's the best course of action here. And so what we want to do, of course, is set our, we want to delete this stone. And I'm happy with the way this, you know, is coming down to this point. And then, you know what? I tell you what, I'm gonna go against the grain a little bit. I'm gonna decide that I want the H to be on top. So up to this point here. So we're gonna come in here, and we're gonna respace these stones just a tiny little bit. And then of course we got to go from here back to the intersection point over here. So let's respace those a little bit. So that's respace those. Now this is going to come around. So this has to come right there. And this has to be respaced. And then of course our A is going to come around just like this. Respace. Shuffle, 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 which is fine. And then we have to consider how this H is going to come around. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of change the way this would come through. Let's go ahead and delete that one stone. And we're just going to make it however we want to make it, so it looks like it's all continuous. And I think I'm happy with that right there. So now we have all of our intertwining done. Let's go ahead and change our stone size back to crystal for the whole kit and caboodle here. Let's throw a weed box around it. Let's go ahead and give it some simulation. Pretty nifty. And if you look at all those intersections there, they all look perfect. So that's a way to take advantage of a pre-designed font. We did quite a bit of manipulation with stone sizes and then changing all those intersecting points to get it perfect. That respace function here inside EasyStone certainly aids in that process of getting a perfect looking result. So I hope you enjoyed this one and try it. Try it out, because I think you'll find that it's really not as complicated as I made it look. It's just a matter of getting in there and getting a feel for how these functions work. And I think once you actually get in there and try it a few times, you'll find that it actually works pretty darn slick. Thanks for watching.